In October 2020, a Japanese animated film called Demon Slayer, Mugen Train opened in Japanese theaters. By the time it finished its worldwide release, it had grossed over $512 million. It became the highest-grossing film of 2020 anywhere in the world. It was the first time in the history of cinema that a non-Hollywood production topped the global annual box office. It also became the highest-grossing Japanese film of all time, taking that title from Spirited Away. Most anime films do not gross more than $10 million internationally. Some of the most acclaimed anime films in history, including Akira and Ghost in the Shell, grossed less in their entire original theatrical runs than Mugen Train did in its first weekend in Japan. The gap between Mugen Train and the rest of the anime film industry is not a small gap. It is a several hundred times gap. The reasons Demon Slayer broke through are structural, and they are worth understanding because they only worked because of a specific combination of factors that came together in one window. The first factor was the studio. Demon Slayer was produced by Ufotable, a relatively small Japanese animation studio that had spent the previous 15 years building a reputation for the highest production values in television anime. Ufotable's animators specialized in fight choreography and digital compositing. They were not the largest studio in Japan. They were the most technically ambitious. The studio had developed an unusual production model where they took on fewer projects than their competitors and put significantly more frames into each one. The result was that when Demon Slayer aired in 2019, the fight sequences in the show looked more like theatrical animation than weekly television. This created a problem for Ufotable. Their production model was so expensive per episode that the studio could not sustain it on television licensing fees alone. They needed an additional revenue stream. The natural one, given the quality of their work, was theatrical films. The second factor was the franchise's source material. Demon Slayer was originally a manga by Koyoharu Gotouge, serialized in Shueisha's weekly Shonen Jump from 2016 to 2020. The manga was successful in Japan, but not unusually so, until the anime aired. The anime, when it aired in 2019, generated a wave of new manga readership that pushed the series from a mid-list Jump title to the best-selling manga in Japan within months. By the end of 2020, Demon Slayer manga had outsold One Piece for the year, ending One Piece's 11-year run as the top-selling manga. The combination of an exceptionally produced anime series and a massive manga sales surge created an audience hungry for more content. The standard way to capitalize on this in Japan is to greenlight a film. The standard way for the film to perform is to do solid business in Japan and minor business internationally. The third factor was timing. The film was scheduled to open in October 2020. By that point, the COVID-19 pandemic had closed or restricted theaters globally for over 7 months. Japan was one of the few countries that had reopened its cinemas. There was, in Japanese theaters, essentially no Hollywood competition. The summer 2020 Hollywood slate had been entirely delayed or moved to streaming. The fall 2020 Hollywood slate had largely been moved to 2021. This was an unusual market condition. Japanese theaters had a captive audience, no major competing releases, and a population that had spent 7 months not going to movies. The Demon Slayer film walked into theatrical conditions that no anime film had ever encountered. The result in the first weekend was unprecedented. Mugen Train opened to over $40 million in Japan, the largest opening of any film in Japanese cinema history. It crossed $100 million within 2 weeks. It surpassed Spirited Away as the highest-grossing Japanese film of all time within 10 weeks. This Japanese performance alone would have been historic. But it was the fourth factor, distribution, that turned a Japanese phenomenon into a global one. In April 2021, an American company called Funimation, which was owned by Sony Pictures Entertainment, acquired the international distribution rights to Mugen Train. Funimation had been the dominant Western distributor of anime for decades. They were also at that point in the middle of a corporate consolidation with Crunchyroll, the other major anime streaming platform. Sony was buying Crunchyroll. The two would later be merged. Funimation, with Sony Pictures' theatrical distribution capability behind it, did something unusual for an anime release. They put Mugen Train into wide release in North America. Not a limited art house run. Not a few cities. Wide release. Theaters that had never shown an anime film were showing Demon Slayer. The film opened in North America in April 2021, again into a market with reduced Hollywood competition due to the ongoing pandemic. It grossed over $40 million in North America. For an anime film, this was almost unimaginable. The previous record for anime in North America had been held by Pokémon, the first movie, 22 years earlier, and it had been much lower in inflation-adjusted terms. The film continued rolling out internationally through 2021. By the end of its global release, it had grossed over $512 million. That number is the result of several factors compounding in the same direction. The Japanese theatrical conditions were unprecedented. The animation quality was the best the medium had produced in decades. The franchise's manga had just outsold One Piece. The pandemic had cleared most competing releases. Sony's distribution infrastructure pushed it into wider theatrical release than any anime film had ever received. If any one of these factors had been absent, the film would have done substantially less. The animation quality alone would have produced a successful film, but not a global record breaker. The pandemic theatrical conditions alone would have helped some anime release, but not this much. The Sony distribution alone would have benefited some film, but not at this scale. The combination is what produced the $500 million number. The lesson buried in this story is that breakout cultural events are usually the result of multiple structural advantages compounding at the same moment. They are not, usually, the result of one company being smarter than the others. They are the result of conditions that allow a well-prepared product to be received by a market that, for unusual reasons, is unusually able to receive it. Most analysis of Demon Slayer's success focuses on the show itself. The show is good. The show is, on its own merits, an exceptional piece of work. The show is not several hundred times more exceptional than every other anime film of the last 20 years. The reason Mugen Train made several hundred times more money than most anime films is not the quality gap. It is the structural gap in distribution, timing, and market conditions between Mugen Train's release and the release of any anime film before it. Ufotable has continued to produce Demon Slayer films. The next installment, Infinity Castle, released in 2025, is on pace to potentially surpass Mugen Train's total gross. The infrastructure that Mugen Train built has not gone away. Sony's anime distribution capacity has expanded. Crunchyroll's theatrical releases are now common. The general expectation that anime can open wide in Western theaters now exists, where 5 years ago it did not. Mugen Train did not just succeed. It built the infrastructure that allows the next anime film to succeed. That infrastructure is the most lasting consequence of the original film's box office number. The number itself is impressive. The new market category it created is the actual story. If you found this interesting, subscribe. We go deep on the structural reasons certain cultural products break through to global markets, while equally good ones do not. Drop your requests in the comments. Thanks for watching.